system cannot produce effective measures to get rid of CO2. And I want to basically say there's two reasons for it. I'm dividing them into two reasons. The first is that whatever way you figure it, and the first reason I'm going to give for this, it's not something which has to be the case. I mean, it's possible to envisage a capitalist system without fossil fuels. Put it that to you. It's difficult, but it's possible to think of capitalism, of private property rights, of free market, without the reliance on CO2 that we have at the moment. But there's a slight problem. And the problem is that historically, capitalism has developed with this link with CO2, with this link with fossil fuels. And therefore, for capitalism to shift in with the kind of speed, with the kind of severity that we need, poses a massive difficulty for it. Not just a technical difficulty or a logistical difficulty. It poses a massive difficulty in many different ways. When you think of, if you look at, say, in 2000, I think it was 2006, 2007, 2008, the biggest profits ever posted by any capitalist firm in the history of capitalism were posted by the Exxon Corporation. Now, again, just observe that for a second. It's not that oil is an oil fuel which posted all profits. Oil is still by far the biggest and most profitable commodity in the world. And you want to take capitalism away from that. I would think that the evidence suggests that not from its cold dead hands, as Charlton Heston would say, will capitalism let go of CO2 or carbon or of oil. So the link historically with CO2, with oil and with coal is very, very strong. The entire industrial revolution was built upon it. John Bellamy Foster actually has in one of his more recent books, it's not his figure, he got it from another study was done, but I can't actually remember the figure. It's tempted to scream at you, there's so many trillions involved in it. But the infrastructure of capital that is dependent and hooked up the fossil fuel burning to oil and coal is in the trillions, hundreds of trillions, far greater than far greater than the actual present crisis with the banks. It's a massive amount of money. The entire infrastructure of capitalism is built in, it's inbuilt, locked in to CO2, to oil and coal and gas. And that's one reason. The historic association with the fact that you have, whether it's the rubber industry, the steel industry, all these things are intimately locked in with the entire development of capital. And it's not going to be easy in any stretch to get these things switched off or move away from it. The second one is that if you look, and actually just before I finish, if you look at actually what's happened, for all the talk of switching to renewables, switching to clean energy, switching to more CO2 neutral ways of producing, where is the big money these days going into? And this is quite depressing in many respects. Where's the big money? Compare the money that's going into, say, investing in renewables, looking at ways in which you can move to a carbon neutral economy. Compare to where the research and development and where the big grants are to be had. They're in these wonderful technologies called fracking. Fracking is where you essentially extract the gas from shell rock formations. Extraordinarily dirty, expensive, and unfortunately, one of the second biggest carbon storage units the planet still has. If they do that on a large scale throughout the planet, you're talking about more and more CO2 being released in the atmosphere. At the moment, you mentioned Bill McKibben and Hansen at the start of it. About 2 months back, both of them were arrested outside the White House. There's a massive protest movement in the States around the issue of the tar sands in Alberta. There's a pipeline being built from Canada right the way through the States to the Gulf of Mexico. It's called the Skywalker XL. McKibben and Hansen got arrested outside the White House, along with about 1,200 activists protesting at this. Hansen has been quoted as saying that if they begin to extract oil on a commercial basis from the tar sands of Alberta, it's game over for the climate. And what he means there is that this is the second biggest sink of CO2 reservoir of CO2 in the planet. And if capitalism begins successfully to extract that on a commercial basis, the game is over for us in terms of trying to stop it. And there's been quite a large mobilisation of activists around that. And I pointed out to say that far from weaning themselves away from CO2, global multinational corporations and capitalism are more relevant than ever because it is a guaranteed profit source. And to stop that, you're going to have to do more than appeal to the Mother Nature. You're going to have to do more than appeal to the interests of our grandchildren or their great-grandchildren. So I'd give those as being two broad reasons why it's going to be extremely difficult to get modern capitalism away from CO2, away from its love affair with CO2. So just moving on, I think there is, obviously, as Marxists, I think we have a lot to say on everything, but I think we have a huge amount to bring, I think there's a number of things that we have to do. I think the movement itself, the environmental movement, has a crisis, has reached a threshold, it's reached a crossroads in terms of where it goes. If you look at the likes of, I know I keep mentioning Hansen and McKibben in the States, but right across the world, I think after Copenhagen, there was a massive level, I think, of defeatism after what happened in Copenhagen among the movement, among the people involved in climate justice and the massive climate change. many people, in goodwill and in all honesty, put their faith in some form of a market mechanism to stop CO2. Because they didn't see really any alternative. I think a lot of people did it. A lot of people did it because they thought maybe it would work. A lot of people did it because maybe they thought the only option was to lobby your government to try and get your government to change course on it. And after Copenhagen, there's definite sense among a whole layer of those activists that this just didn't work. You know, after all the years and efforts we put into this simply didn't work. Copenhagen, to me anyway, and I think to a lot of people, represented a huge defeat for the idea that you get governments. The minute the recession hit, the first thing they did was say, we can't afford it, we can't afford this, we can't afford to put a tax on CO2. Effectively, because of the recession, they're saying we can't afford to save the planet. I think that demoralised quite a lot of activists. But within that movement, and I think it is a mass movement, potentially a mass movement, there is a sort of crisis as to